Hello, I'm Dr. Rosie Kuhn, and I am at my friend Marge and Fred's house. My power's gone off in my trailer, and so I'm having to redo things until I get things clear. I'm going to see if this makes a difference. Wow. So, well, that's about as good as it gets. Last time I was here, the lighting made my hair look very yellow, and it was or red, and it was very unusual for me to look that way. So we tried something else. Anyway, welcome. Hello. Um, I am talking about living alone this month, which is December. The theme for this month of December 2021 is living alone. Now, this came up because I've lived alone a lot in this lifetime. I grew up in a large family until I was 18 and went off to college. I had roommates, got married very quickly after that. So I was married and lived with my husband and children. And then when I was like 26 or 27, I separated from my husband, went to school and moved to another place to go to school and start a new life for myself. And in that moment, I left my husband and my children at that time with the intention that my children would at some point soon come live with me. But that was the first time I lived alone, truly. And I had an apartment in a 13-story building, and I didn't have very many friends. I didn't have any friends when I moved. That was to Kitchener, Ontario, in Canada, and I went through a major withdrawal from people. I'd never been so alone. I'd never been so, my life had been, in a sense, habitually lived it as a habit. I lived with other people. And so disconnecting from that habit, it took a while. So some of the things, the intention of sharing these things with you and the intention of talking about living alone is because there's some elements of this that still are part of my reality as a person who lives alone, and that I think is important for us to talk about as part of self-transformation, self-growth, getting to know yourself, for each of us to get to know ourselves. And a couple of months ago, I launched a boot camp in self-transformation. It was called Inward Bound Boot Camp for Self-Transformation. So this topic, this is part of how we go through self-transformation, if you will, as we put ourselves in circumstances and challenges. Sometimes we put ourselves in that. In some ways, sometimes life puts us in those situations. But these are moments where we're capable of learning who we are and what we're about. And so when we live alone, we become, there's a potential for us to get to know who we are. And I say that way because we can live alone, yet be totally enmeshed in other peopleness and other thingness that we don't potentially get to know ourselves at all. We can totally ignore and distract ourselves from ourselves, or we can create that opportunity by living alone to find ourselves and explore ourselves and our needs and our wants and our desires, and make them happen, self-empower ourselves to make that happen. So again, I mentioned the boot camp for self-transformation. If you're interested in that, the links are below in the description, and you're welcome to look at that. It's a free boot camp here on YouTube. So the intention of talking about living alone is that there are elements that we might not consider, or it may be influencing us in a way that we're not even aware of. The other day, a couple of weeks ago, we had a major rain situation. I'm up here in the Pacific Northwest, and it rained so much. There were mudslides and houses that got full of mud, or just went down the hill, and all of those kinds of things. And I've lived alone in my place since 2003, so almost 20 years. I live in a travel trailer, which is a lovely little space, a tiny little house on 10 acres. And I have a renter who lives about 600 feet away. Can't see him, but I know he's there. But there was a point in this that with all the rain and the possibility for mudslides, which happened, we had a little mudslide or the road washing out, I got really scared. And not only got scared, I got tired. It's like, I'm tired of living alone. I'm tired of all the responsibility being on my shoulders. It was, it's easier somehow when we think that we can collaborate with other people and live with other people so that we're, both holding, there's more than just me holding that responsibility. So in that moment where I go, gosh, I'm tired of living alone. I'm tired of living in the woods where there's basically nobody around, and big rocks can come down and squish me, or trees can fall over. And I just got to a point where it was like, I'm tired of this. And the thought of, well, I could go live in Edmonton where my daughter is, and live in the city, or move into town or whatever. And it was a matter of questioning my reality, in a sense of saying, what do I really want? My final choice is, I love where I live, and taking the responsibility and for myself is really important to me. But self-reliance is really important to me, and that came through years of living alone. But that was sort of the trigger. Like, we need to talk about this. I need to talk about this in terms of self-empowerment, self-knowledge, self-wisdom, self-appreciation, self-trust, feeling safe with myself. Part of being on, I think, anywhere in the world now, I don't think it's just me not feeling safe. I think a lot of people, because of whether it's political, economical, or environmental, there's a lot of issues around, am I safe? Am I safe with myself? So that was part of the question is, I'm tired of having to rely on myself all the time. And I have friends who will come and help me. It's not like I am alone in the world. I have plenty of friends. But that sense of, gosh, I'm tired of being responsible for myself. At the same time, when I think about living with other people, I think it would have to be a really special match because, first of all, I live in a very small area, probably less than 400 square feet. But who I've become, I'm a light sleeper. I'm very sensitive. My work, writing or doing YouTubes or coaching, whatever that is I need a lot of solitude. So thinking about partnership, it's kind of would be an interesting partnership because I really actually come down to it, enjoy living alone. So again, I keep coming back to what's the intention of this talk? Why would you want to listen to this? And it's not about me basically talking about that, but it's like, what are the intentions when an individual, first of all, chooses to live alone, or gets into circumstances where they have to choose to live alone. So for instance, when I left my marriage, my choice was I need to live alone because I'm choosing to leave my marriage. And that was the case. And there was this part of me that was saying, oh, within 6 months, I'll have another relationship and I'll just move in with that person. So it was a transitional time is the way I saw it, which what I really needed to do was really learn to live alone. I needed to learn to live, learn to like myself and appreciate myself and respect myself. Now, I don't know if that makes sense to you, but so many of us are afraid of knowing ourselves, afraid of who we are, the things that we might find out about ourselves that we might not like. So quite often we destruct ourselves and we look for other people to like us. We look for other people maybe to be roommates, or we look for other people to love us. Then we move in together and we do that. And then we believe we're safe and we won't feel alone. But quite often people in relationships feel more alone than when they're being alone. I've found that for myself many times. So what I want to do in this series, these 4 lives on talking about living alone, is looking at the elements of that, which are very personal, very connected to who you are and how you can learn to be yourself. Quite often, I know people in marriages and partnerships where they can't know themselves without a reference to their partner. It's like, well, what do you want to do for dinner? I don't know. I have to ask John. What do you want to Do you want to go to the movies? Well, I don't know. My kids are doing such and such. I have to check in with them. So there's always a referencing to other people about what you want or what you could want. And so when you live alone, you have the freedom and flexibility to know whether you want to go out, know what you want for dinner, know if you want to go for a movie. Hey, Marge. You said, I've never lived alone and have been married for 58 years. I will only know what that's like if my husband dies before me. So he and I are teaching each other some of our skills. Yeah, that's a really, really good thing to do. I have to go over here. I don't have my glasses on, and to read the chats, I have to lean really forward to see them, or put my glasses on. We'll see if that works. Not so good. So when I was kind of doing a little research about living alone, it said there's 36 million people in the United States who live alone. So in essence, you're not alone. You're living alone, but you're not alone, because there's a lot of people who are living alone. And that's 28% of the American population now live alone. And that's higher than it's ever been. And the other interesting thing is 27% of people over 60 live alone. So 27%. So most people live with other people, whether that's a partnership or their children or their families or roommates or whatever that is. And only a very, a third, not less than a third of the population lives alone. But that's still a lot of people who are in that situation. And again, like Marge is saying, she's never lived alone and she won't know what that's like. And that's true for so many people, is until their spouse dies or moves into a nursing residence or something like that, they won't know what it's really like to live alone and to know who they are without that referencing to their partners of their partners. And it's a really interesting and fascinating process. Part of this, again, and I keep referencing the intention of this, is you may be thinking of living alone. You may be living alone. You may like it or not like it. But it's a process that we go through that we can grow through, not just go through, but grow through and evolve through to know ourselves better. And I think that's a really important piece of a spiritual journey, or a life as a spiritual being. And I've spent part of my life in partnerships and marriages, and I've spent part of my life as a mother and parent, and I've spent part of my life as an independent individual. So I have all of these different places where I've learned about myself, and I want to continue to learn about myself. I want to expand who I am in through friendships. That's been a really good portal, if you will, or avenue for learning who I am and learning my preferences and respecting and honoring myself. Quite often we rely on our friends to tell us what we should do, the way that we should wear our hair, what we should eat, as opposed to having friends and being with people that respect me and honor me and want me to be me, as opposed to be who they want me to be. No, that's a big thing. So when we live alone, we can learn to trust ourselves and respect ourselves and to feel safe with ourselves. Next week, I'll be talking about living alone and the meanings we make about that. Whether it means we're incompetent of commitment or relationships, or whether it means whatever it means. We'll talk about that next week. But right now we're talking about, okay, are you choosing to live alone? Or are you living alone as that transitional place, like I talked about for myself, between relationships? Are you living alone because it's really what your essence needs and what you need for yourself? What is it? Or your partner died, and so this is what you're left with, or the consequences of life situations are such that this is what is right now. So it's kind of interesting. And again, what I want for you is for you to say, okay, so I am living alone, and I see that I'm living alone as a transition because I really want partnership. And part of that, when we do that, we're in that wait. We're waiting for that person to come. And in that waiting, we're anticipating and expecting and hoping and wishing, but we're not then present to who we are in this moment. And again, I've gone through this many, many, many times and watched, in a sense, it's a revelation that I live alone. And yet there's this part of me that's been anticipating relationship with somebody else, partnership, or my children coming to live with me. And in that anticipation, I'm not here having a life. I'm just in waiting for. And I think that's a really important thing to bring up is that am I waiting for or am I really living my life? Really living my life now? Am I quite often I would have, so for instance, I love Persian rugs. And so I have a yurt and there's a lot of Persian rugs in there. And it's like, oh, those will go to my children. Or, oh, I'll buy this because my children will like it when they inherit it. And it's like all of those things are, again, referencing what other people might want or what my expectation is. But is it what I want to live with now? Is it what makes me happy? Is it what fulfills me now, regardless of what the future brings? And it's almost like hitting the glass wall. I know in business they talk about the glass ceiling and how high you can go, but the glass wall for me a number of times has been I run into this wall that says, I'm not living my life for me. I'm still living my life for somebody else who isn't here. That has been my children. It has been partners who live someplace else, but we're in a long distance relationship. And that realization that I'm living my life for somebody who isn't here, just an interesting way to live life, right? Or I'm living life. I do a lot of my painting here at this house that belongs to Marge and Fred. And I spend a lot of time here. And so when I go home, where I do most of my work and writing and sleeping, and it's like, am I home? Am I creating a home for myself? Do I live alone, or do I actually live here with my friends and then just go home to sleep? So those are all kinds of dilemmas that show up for me when I'm questioning the quality of my life as an individual. And I think most of us have these questions, whether we're living in partnerships or living with children or living with our parents, is that we have these questions like, who am I and where do I fit into my own life or my own sense of self in relation to all of these other people? Any thoughts? So what I want to talk about is a little bit of, again, there's that part of choosing to break up from relationships, or your children they're leaving you, so you might be alone because your children have left the nest, so that you're now home. Marge has put a funny face on. So there are times where consequences are such that people leave us, like children are leaving us. If we're an independent single parent, our children leave us, we're now alone. Or again, if somebody dies or goes into a home, there's a lot of ways that we end up living alone that we didn't intend. But it's still a time and a space for us to get to know each other, get to know myself, get to know you, get to know yourself. So that choosing, again, somebody I know and was in a close relationship with, he said, I really need to spend time alone. I really need to spend a few months alone before I get into another relationship. And bada bing, bada boom, blink, and he's in another relationship, and he never gave himself that time. So that individual has not lived alone probably he's close to 70. He probably hasn't lived alone for the majority of that. As long as I've known him, he hasn't lived alone. So it's really interesting. And it's not that you need to live alone as a spiritual practice to learn, but quite often it's something that we face. at some time in our life or not, and to be aware of that then, because okay, am I prepared? And like Marge and Fred are teaching themselves each other some of the skills that they might not have because they've been relying on each other to do that for each other, financial stuff or outdoor stuff or whatever that is. And it's like, I think I need to know how to do that because at some point I might have to live alone, and I need to know how to do that. I need to know where the bank keys are, and I need to know where what the safe, the combination is on the safe. I need to know where the whatevers are, the wills and the testaments, wills and trusts and things like that. I need to know those things. And so as you might be preparing for those potential times, that's also part of this process of living alone is, what do I know? What do I don't know? What don't I know? Today was a day where, and this has been going on for a few weeks, it's kind of got tripped with the mudslide and all that. But, my water heater in my trailer cracked, which happens in trailers quite a lot when you're living in them full time. And then today there's something else. The electrical thing didn't work. Now I don't know how to, in the beginning, I don't know how to fix those things. It's like, oh my God, I got to deal with this. I got to be responsible. I got to make decisions. I got to make choices. I got to find somebody who can fix it for me, or I can find somebody who can help me fix this. But in the initial stages of living alone, there's that place like I am totally responsible, or it feels like I'm totally responsible. And I think that's true for a lot of people, and that's what they don't want to do. It's like, I don't want to be responsible for myself. I don't want to be responsible for all the bills and all the choices that I have to make. I don't want to be responsible for cooking for myself. I don't want to be responsible for cleaning the house. We don't want that responsibility. And yet, as an individual, and again, we're all at choice, the degree to which we want to grow ourselves, the degree to which we want to grow that capacity to be in the world in an effective way, that's really important. So, and I realized this when after I left my marriage, is like one of the things I really needed to learn by living alone was self-reliance, that I could rely on myself to make choices and decisions and not hurt myself, and hurt myself by making irresponsible decisions. So even that was 50 years ago. Is that right? 40 years ago. Even now, like today, going, okay, I've got a situation. The power's gone off in my trailer. Who do I want to call? What do I want to do? What's the best first thing to do? And so I called the place where the trailer was bought and talked to the service people, and they said, ABC, here's what you need to do to start with. So I followed that. Now, am I comfortable with it? No. Am I anxious and stressed? Yes. But I'm growing through that challenge to go, oh man, I don't want to deal with this. Much like when the rains came and I didn't want to deal with having to live alone. Don't want the responsibility. And sometimes that's a dilemma. It's like, I don't want that responsibility, but I'm not happy in the situation where I'm living with other people. And that's the dilemma that we face quite often, is I'd rather choose to be self-responsible and self-reliant and learn to know that I am safe and trust that I'm taken care of. And there are people all over the place that know how to do what I don't know how to do. I just have to take care of the situation. That I would rather do that than live with somebody that I'm not compatible with, that's not a partner for me. And so those are the choices that we have to make. And I'll talk more about that next week in talking about the meanings that we make of living alone. So it's a big deal. Again, part of what we're doing in this process of living alone is individuating. My mom had a beautiful home, and she had the style she had. The furniture looked the way that she liked it to look. And when I moved into my home with my husband, I was like, oh, we're going to do this, and we're going to do this, and we're going to do this. But it was still a reflection of her style. And it took me a while to get to a point where I could actually know what my style is. And so that's one of the cool things about living alone, is that you get to know what your style is. You get to know what feels right for you. You get to know what, in a sense, you're creating a space, you're creating a sacred space for yourself. Now, you can do this with, if you're living with a roommate, some people live with a roommate, but you're kind of living alone with a roommate, but you get to create this space for yourself that reflects peace and harmony, or love, or fun, or playfulness, or passion, whatever it is that's important to you. And that's a really cool thing about learning to live alone, is you get to learn what's important to you and what's of value to you, and how you want to express yourself. It's a place. Your home is a place of your expression, versus, again, having to say, oh honey, your partner, do you like this look? Do you like this style? Do you like this? Or what's your preference? But you get to know who you are in that. And it's pretty interesting to do that. It's fun. It gets to be fun. Some of you may have seen some of the paintings I've done. And I love my paintings. I love painting them. And they're not paintings I would hang in my house. I have a couple of them up. I have one of my dog, Gracie, up, and I have one, a couple little ones. But that particular style of painting doesn't work in my space, and especially because my space is really small. But it's just interesting to say, I love my paintings. I love painting them, but I don't want to hang them in my house, because the style of those doesn't feel right to me. So in living alone, we get to know what that is. We get to know who we are inside. And, is that important? For me, learning to know who I am and respecting myself, feeling safe with myself, trusting myself, that's the bottom line in learning to live life. Because as I've said in previous lives, we are so ingrained in a strategy of what we're afraid people will find out or decide about us. Like, what are you afraid people will find out or decide about you? If they find out you live alone, you go, oh, I don't want them to know this about me. I don't want them to know that about me. It's like, well, what do you do so people don't find that out? And you start to list all the strategies you do so people don't find out who you are, your preferences, or the things that you're afraid they'll find out. And you realize the degree to which you live in strategies and you live in patterns and habits, but don't really live from your authentic self and your authentic expression of yourself. So when you're living alone, or you have your space, if you're living with a partner, a roommate, is you get to create that sacred space for yourself, one that really reflects you and is an expression of you. And that's a really cool thing. You get to know what that is. And quite often people are really afraid of that. I have been living in a travel trailer since 2004, so almost 20 years. And in that, most of it, I was ashamed that I lived in a travel trailer. And even though I had 10 acres and this beautiful view and wonderful place that I live, there was some shame and guilt, not guilt, but shame, because I was living in a trailer. And the intention was I would live in the trailer while I was building my house. Well, the house hasn't been built yet. And but I've upgraded into a trailer, a different size trailer, bigger trailer, and a more modernized and a trailer that feels really comfortable to me. And it has become, rather than a place of shame, it's become really, I embrace the lifestyle of it, even though, the power's gone out or the water heater's broken or whatever it is. Those things happen in trailers, they happen in houses, they happen wherever, in apartments. And so it's something to be with. But when we look at how are we living, and what's the degree of stress or anxiety or shame that we live with as a strategy or pattern, it's really important to say, we can do it differently. You can do it differently. I can continue to do it differently. And what that means is learning to be more relaxed with who we are, learning to enjoy who you are, learning to be, in essence, your best friend. I really enjoy now. I enjoy my companionship And when people would say that at first, it would be like, I don't know what you're talking about. I'm just me, and I'm waiting for somebody to show up to help me out here. Uh, but uh, but I've gotten to really appreciate and value who this person is. Marge says, did you that you did anything in crisis is so much better than freezing up and making no decisions. And David has arrived. Thank you, David. I'm glad you're here. Blessings and Merry Christmas to you too. Um, the freezing thing was Marge mentions that I don't freeze. I don't go into a panic, and um, I think I do. I mean, I would rather just call somebody and say, could you come over and fix this for me? Then I don't have to do it. Uh, but about 30 years ago, I was sailing on a 93-foot schooner, and for a couple of years, I was doing some cruising with people, and there was a big wind that came through and knocked the boat down, and it scooped up all kinds of water. We weren't expecting this little tiny, we call it a microburst. We didn't expect it to. We didn't expect it, and so all the portals were open and everything was open. And so when the boat went over, it sucked in all this water, and it was a kind of a moment of potential death. And it was like I asked myself, okay, what do I want to do? I'm sitting here watching this boat potentially sink. And it's like, how do I want to die? Do I want to die sitting here in a panic and rah, or can I do something while I'm potentially dying? And it was like, that was the better option. So found my way downstairs and around the corner and what I needed to do, and found a pump, little tiny pump. There's thousands of gallons of water, but doing something felt better than doing nothing. And so I think that was like a shift for me from that place of freezing and expecting to be saved to, I got to go do something just for my own sanity. And so that was really, I think, a really important piece of this. Just like Marge and I was talking to you today, there was a part of me that didn't want to show up for this live. I was stressed, but it's like, if I don't show up for this, what am I going to do? I'm not, I don't have anything better to do. I don't have something that's going to help me any quicker, because I still have to go home and take care of what needs to be taken care of. That it's a matter of choosing then, how do I want to spend my time? What's going to be the most effective way of being me in relation to a time of crisis? Even though this is a tiny little crisis, it's still a crisis, because it is, whatever that degree is. So each of us has a capacity to figure out what it is they need to do or not do in times of there's something to be done. And since there's an accountability or responsibility or choices to be made, and that's that place of growing ourselves and saying, okay, I'm dithering, I'm just mumbling and bumbling around. I've got to focus here to get something done, to feel like I'm intentional with what's going on. That was that mindset that came up for me. So, and again, living alone, there's that place, that you say, there's nobody else here that's going to do those dishes. There's nobody else here that's going to clean the toilet. There's nobody else here that's going to make sure that the internet is working, or whatever those things are, that we begin to be self-reliant. I grew up codependent. I grew up and became, in essence, an addict, a love addict. Okay, I really wanted that relationship, that partnership, because I kept thinking that would save me from myself. And as long as I had a partnership, life would be good. But partnerships weren't good because I was using them for the wrong reasons. And so by living alone and learning who I am, and coming to no longer be afraid of being alone, and no longer being afraid of living alone, maybe till the day I die, then my partnerships or my relationships are authentic. And that means I truly respect the person that I'm communicating with, whether it's friends or family or potential partners, it doesn't come from a place of I'm afraid to be alone. And so much of my life I spent being afraid of being alone. And so I was using my partner to be my lifeline. And that's not a good way to be in partnership, because I don't get to be authentic because I'm relying on them. And then they have to show up for me in a way that, and if they don't, then I'm upset and pissed off or scared. And that's where a lot of people are in relationship that way. So David, are you still? Oh, let's see. Oh, Oren Jackie is here too. Hello, I'm glad you're here. Any other thoughts or feedback that you guys have so far? Sometimes accepting being alone, one accepts in shutting down. Can you say more about that, David? Sometimes accepting being alone, one accepts in shutting down. Can you say a little bit more about that? I think for me, in partnership, and maybe this is what you're saying, David, in partnership, when things aren't working well in partnership, it's quite often somebody's going to shut down or pull away. And in that pulling away, that shutting down, there is that aloneness. And I know for me, and I said this before, that some of my loneliest times in my life have been when I'm in relationship with other people and I'm living in the same house with other people. Was a desperate, I would say, a desperate loneliness, because I wasn't seen, I wasn't heard, I wasn't seen. It was like I was invisible. And when I'm in my own company, I can certainly become invisible, but that's not my intention with myself. David says, I live alone and don't seem to bother so much these days with keeping up with all the chores. Yes. I think that can be true. What used to be really important, isn't so important anymore. I used to be more full of clutter and dishes and things like that, where now I'm allowing myself to actually have a cleaner house and a more less cluttered house. The dishes get done a little bit more often. Dusting doesn't happen. It doesn't happen. Vacuuming happens sometimes, like you're saying, but it doesn't bother me. But I like it. I think it's clean. My house is clean and I like it. But I bring it, you probably know people who clean when they're going to have guests. Family's coming or the holidays are coming. Let's clean. And it's like, well, why not clean for you so that you like and enjoy your space for you, as opposed to doing it for other people? These are some of those patterns that whether you're living with people or not, are part of your everyday life, where you go, oh, I want it to look nice for everybody. It's like, well, how about making it look nice for you? And I don't have enough dust to make myself uncomfortable. When it gets uncomfortable, I'll dust, or I'll hire somebody to come in and clean. But everything else is clean enough, and that's the way I like it. It's clean enough. If it's too clean, it's not comfortable. But it's getting where I'm more comfortable with what is, and that can be that it's more clean, and I like that. But I'm listening for my preferences, as opposed to I should clean because I'm having guests. Or I should clean because my mother will see that dirt and just freak out, those kinds of things, as opposed to saying, who cares? Who cares? Your mom doesn't have to come over. So yeah, that I think I'm not sure, David, if what you're saying is the shutting down is like, it's just not that important to you anymore. And again, that's that place where you get to decide, living alone, what's important to you, what's of value. I love the outdoors element of my life, and I love doing things outdoors. But for some reason, when I'm doing it with somebody else, I'll do it, and it's so much more fun. But otherwise, because there's nobody around, I'm not doing the things outside that I could do and enjoy. And that's a part of me that I think is more of a shutting down. If I had somebody around or had visitors that came and it's like, hey, let's do such and such, I'd be outside and doing it and participating. Some of those ways is really important for me to have that connection. It's part of what I get here at Marge and Fred's is I paint with Marge. We cook, I cook with Marge. We play Wii golf with Fred. Fred's very, very helpful with things that I need done around the house. He's going to come up and help me with my electricity after this. But that partnership makes it so much easier sometimes. And that's an element of living alone that you want to work out for yourself. It's like, when do I need partnership? When do I need companionship? When do I need other people? Need in terms of that desire to play, that desire to connect. David says, I reached a stage that I need to declutter all those extra things collected through life. Yep. It happens for so many people. And that's one of the benefits for me of living in a trailer is there's not a lot of room for stuff. And I have my yurt, but that is, it's not cluttered so much. There's stuff down there, but it's not like storage in boxes. I have a few places where things are, but I'm conscious of that place of what do I need for myself? What do I need in that sense of my own, again, learning what's true for me? What do I need for self-reliance, self-fulfillment, self-connection? There are things that I think about whenever I take something new or buy something new or something. It's like, where am I going to put it? But I also think about when I die, because there's nobody else I live with, right? What's going to happen to this stuff? And I don't want to make my children responsible for having to clean up after me. So when I die, I don't want them to have like stuff that they have to deal with. And that's an important piece for me, is I don't want people to have to look after me that way, clean up after me in that way. So I kind of try to declutter as I go. So I totally get that piece of it. So a thing that what we're doing, if you're choosing or find yourself in that place of you're living alone, we're leaning against our comfort zone. And if you were living with people, when we start to do something different, we start to lean against our comfort zone, and it feels really uncomfortable. Change of any kind feels uncomfortable, and we're growing that capacity to be with the discomfort of change, because change happens all the time. We don't want it to happen. We imagine it's not happening, but it's happening. Just like the water heater breaks, or power goes out, or the rain creates mudslides or takes out houses, or whatever that is, change happens. But mostly we're of the mindset of just let me be in my comfort zone. Let me distract and avoid change and having to be with that. So part of living alone is part of choosing to learn who you are, what your capacities are, what your potential is, what you want to create for yourself in knowing who you are. And most of us, especially in my work as a transformational coach, people want what they want, which requires change. And they're not willing to get out of their comfort zone in order to create the change, in order to create what they want. They just want, it says, I want this, I want to stay the same, and I want you to hand this to me. And it usually doesn't work that way. And we go, well, they got it that way, or they got it that way. It's like, yeah, that's maybe sort of, you don't know the context, you don't know the situation. And so for you to come to any one of us to say, hey, here's what I want. I want a happier partnership. I want a better relationship with my children. I want a better relationship with my work, or whatever that is. It requires a leaning into our comfort zone to expand it. And so choosing to live alone, or if you're in a situation where you haven't chosen it, you just are, then it's a matter of that process of getting comfortable with that process. So it's much, much bigger than, oh, I think I'll go live alone and, just go do that. There's all of this complexity of being a human being and a spiritual being through this process. So again, we're leaning against our comfort zone, maybe going through the withdrawal of living with people. If you've been married or in a partnership or living with family and now you're alone, there's a withdrawal from all of the sensations and all of the energies and all of the connections that were made. And you're without that. And it can feel very uncomfortable and scary because you're so used to that, all the energies and the vibrations and the frequencies and the distractions and the connections and the talking and the TVs and the noises. And when you live alone, it's like a lot of that disappears except for what you create. And that's a big, big thing. That was a hard one for me because I went from, like I said, a very large family, and then I lived in dorms with a lot of people and a lot of distractions to getting to a point where I was living alone. It was like, oh my God, it was really scary, really hard because I was so used to so much activity. And little by little, by little by little, I've learned to live in what I like the word equanimity, in this calm but not calm. I mean, it's calm but not boring. I don't have a boring life from my perspective. And you get to choose that for yourself. You get to choose that level of engagement. And again, watching and observing how much of this is what I want, how much of it is what I'm avoiding or postponing, or I'll feel better once I'm in partnership again. And we dismiss and disregard the potential for learning who we are now. I'll just binge watch, or I'll be on FaceTime or Facebook or Instagram and distract myself until the guy comes along or the girl comes along or the job comes along. And we're in that state of distraction constantly. And distraction's a good thing to have on occasion. But if you're living in distraction, you're not actually living your life. And that's just a choice. No judgment, because I've done that. And now I'm doing this. And so just want to share some of that dynamics with you. The level of accountability and responsibility. A number of years ago, I was running a group called Aging Like a Guru. And so the people in this group were in their 60s, 70s, and 80s. And I said, so, I started talking about being responsible for yourself and responsible for your happiness. And everybody in the room, there were about 12 people, they all went, oh, it's like, I don't want to be responsible for me. I don't want to be responsible for my happiness. I don't want to be responsible for making sure there's money in the bank and that the clutter is cleared. I don't want to be responsible. It's like, okay, I get it. I've been there, done that. And I found that level of codependency, I was dependent on somebody else, and that made me more of more oppressed and suppressed by that relationship. And I always was in relationships where I gave my power away, because that's what I needed to do in order to ensure that the partnership lasted, because I didn't want to live alone and I didn't want to be responsible. And so we can make those choices. Everybody does. Everybody makes the choices they make. That's kind of how we choose our careers. It's like, I have to go under the power of somebody else in order to get money, job, prestige, whatever it is we're looking for in that way. Or we go, yeah, I'm not going to do that anymore. How do I empower myself to make choices so that I'm happy and fulfilled in the work that I do? All of that. Let's see. One of the things in Course in Miracles, I'll just say this. Oops, here it is. And we'll talk about this more next week, but the fear of living alone and the meaning that we make out of living alone is what what we're afraid of. But one of the things that in the Course in Miracles, it says, fear is a symptom of your own deep sense of loss, in a sense that there's something that we believe we've lost or don't have if we live alone. And if we don't reveal that, what that loss is or was, then we can't heal it. And then we become constantly afraid of this and having to be with this deep loss, as opposed to saying, okay, regardless, I want to know what my loss is. I want to experience the truth of myself so that I can be all of me. And without exploring myself in the circumstances of partnership or parenting or work, my relationships with my clients, or my writing, or living alone, or my dog. If I have to reveal myself to myself, that's what's important to me. And if you're watching this, I would suspect it might be important to you too. So that's what this is all about, is what can you find for yourself while you're, it's not the question. The intention is for you to know who you are. To thine own self be true. I don't remember who said that, but I think the really most important thing is to be true to yourself. And all the ways that we don't do that is just the job, in a sense of going, oh, I don't know who I am in this situation. I don't want to be this. I don't want to be that. But it's like, who am I in this? Who am I really? And most of my relationships, or most of my conversations with my clients, are that kind of exploration. Who are you in the midst of this circumstance, in the midst of this dilemma, in the midst of this challenge, in the midst of this, I don't want to, you can't make me? Who are you in that? And that's what you can explore, we, all of us, when we are in aloneness, whether that's alone in our own room, our own apartment or house, or, even in a relationship. David says, I've become dependent because of illness, where nurses and support services assist. Therefore, I've lost my independence greatly due to what I am able to do, and living alone becomes distressing at times. That's a really, really good point, David, is that when you don't have the freedom and the independence anymore, it can be distressing. And I totally get that. And that's a challenge that so many people face and have to be with. And I'm going like this, and it may happen to me at some point to go, okay, so what's the big fat B with? What's the big fat B with in the moment of this sense of reliance, truly relying on other people for your well-being? And it's a challenge. And even in terms of that deep loss, it's the loss of flexibility and freedom and independence. That's a great, huge loss that all of us are afraid of. I was talking to somebody, did a podcast with somebody about who was running nursing homes, and we were talking about aging like a guru. And they said one of the biggest challenges is parent-child relationships, because children want their parents to be safe, where parents want independence. And there's sometimes an inability to find that medium between that place where safety exists and freedom exists. And I would suspect that for you, David, that's one of those places, like where do I have freedom to be me and still have the safety and the reliance that you require because of your illness. So that's a huge be with. That's a statement that I learned when I was training, is quite often we're in these stages or states of being, which are the big fat be with, because we can't fix it, can't heal it, can't make it go away. So how do we be in this place in such a way that it really honors and respects ourselves and other people? It's a big fat be with. So thank you, David, for sharing that. So if this was of value to you, I keep going like this because I have to see what time it is. Please like this video, or and if you haven't already subscribed, you may want to do that so that you stay connected with this. And if self-transformation is something that you're interested in, check out the boot camp. It's free. It's 10 minutes a day if you do one a day for 20 days. And I think it might be fun. Well, I find it fun because that's what I find fun. So again, just be with, and I'm not giving you any suggestions, but again, the intention was to say, okay, am I living alone intentionally, or is this transitional and temporary, or is this something that I really want to know who I am in this experience of living alone and learning to be self-reliant? And that means, calling in people that you need when you need them. So anything else before we go, David or Marge or Oren? All right. Well, thank you for being here. Blessings, David, to you. Merry Christmas. We will be here next week. I'll be talking about living alone and the meanings that we make of that. I didn't talk about that very much today, so I'll talk about that next week, next Thursday. And so that's pretty much it. You're welcome. Thank you, David. And Marge and Fred, thanks for being here too. You guys are the best. And I'll talk to you guys next week. All right. Bye for now.